Welcome everybody to our Inspiring Women's Health webinar. Again, thank you for those of you who have joined already and you've been here on time. We so appreciate it. We've been looking forward to this evening, to being with you and to sharing some amazing information with you that we really hope will make a difference for you, for your life, and for the lives of people around you. So just a couple of things that I want to advise for you to do over the course of this webinar. So we would love to get any questions that may arise over the course of the webinar. So there won't be any hand raising during the webinar itself, but what I'd like you to do is if you can go down to the chat box at the bottom, and you can, if you can private message me by just saying to, and then you can click on my name, which is Tali Rabin, and then you'll be messaging me specifically. So you can private message me your question, and we will do our best at the end during the question and answer period to get to as many questions as possible. Okay, so down in the chat at the bottom, just message to me personally, to Tali Rabin. And the second thing I want to say to you all is that we really want you to come away with new actions that you can implement in your life so that this webinar makes a real difference for you. So to that end, we are recommending that by the end of the webinar, that you write down 2 or 3 actions that you can take based on what you've learned from tonight's event and that you can start implementing in your life. So that way you have tonight's webinar have an effect on you. So without further ado, I would like to welcome you and introduce you to Alexander Mostovoy, who is going to be speaking with you tonight about various aspects of women's health. And Alex, he will talk about some of his background, but I just wanted to share with you that on top of being a renowned speaker, author, clinician, board certified clinical thermographer, he is also a very passionate, loving, caring father and husband and friend and community member who's very, very, very interested in making a difference with people in general, and especially with women's health. And I'm also proud to say that he is my husband. So we are a husband-wife team here with you. And we're very excited to bring you some fantastic information tonight. So without further ado, take it away.
Thank you, Tali. Thank you for organizing. I would like to, let me just share my screen. I hope everyone can see what I can see. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So Tali gave you a warm welcome. I want to welcome you as well. This is a subject that I have been dealing with for the past 20 somewhat years. And as Tali mentioned, I am very passionate about this, and hopefully at some point in time today, you will realize why I feel passionate about this. So without further ado, let me just see. Okay, sorry. So my story, I'm not going to go through my childhood and tell you all about my personal past, but just to kind of give you a couple of highlights. I'm a graduate of Homeopathic College of Canada with a doctorate in homeopathic medicine and science. I was the past president of Homeopathic Medical Council of Canada. Homeopathy was my first love. And then I'm currently a president of the Canadian Association of Clinical Thermology. I have over 25 years of clinical practice and experience. Thermography came into my life in 1999 when one of my best friends and Dr. Alvin Peddle introduced me to thermography. I came to thermography as a complete skeptic, and as you can see what happened to me since, I've turned around and became one of the spokesmen for thermography. I got my BCCT, which stands for Board Certified Clinical Thermologist, since 2002. And since then, I've managed to look over 60,000 cases with 60,000 primarily women. So what you're going to learn, and what I'm hoping to kind of tell you about, is that when it comes to specifically breast cancer, I would like to turn things around and to present that we can come from fear to more of a proactive prevention. I will introduce a multi-step process to prevention, and hopefully it will empower you with the right information. I'm going to start with something maybe that you haven't expected yet, but just imagine each and every day, 3 jumbo jets crash, and each of these jumbo jets has room for 550 passengers, including the crew. So 3 of them, you're looking at 1,600 people that will crash each and every day, every single day of the year. And my question to you is, would you still be interested in flying? I doubt that anyone listening to this would feel safe the next time they're flying in the airplane with statistics like this. However, 1,600 plus women die from breast cancer each and every day. And somehow there's an audacity by some people who claim that there is progress in this particular field. As you can see, I strongly disagree. These are not just numbers. When we're talking about statistics, as a matter of fact, I just skipped a slide. You're looking at close to 2 million women who are suffering from breast cancer yearly. Close to 275,000 women in the United States and Canada will be diagnosed with breast cancer this year, and 550,000 will die in the world this year from breast cancer alone. So these are not just numbers. They are our wives, our sisters, our mothers, our aunts. Each one of these women has a family. They're definitely missed. I know of very few families that have not been touched by breast cancer. And I'm sure either you have personal experience or you know someone who's had the experience of dealing with this particular problem. So what I'm going to show you is basically the current paradigm creates a problem. The problem is that we're not really emphasizing prevention. We're dealing with a lot of screening, and you hear about screening and more screening and more screening and more screening, but we're not dealing with risk assessment. And the current paradigm doesn't really kind of change anything. And that's why year after year after year, we're still dealing with the same problem. If I remember correctly, it was the President Nixon in 1972 that declared the war on cancer, not specifically breast cancer, but generally cancer. And I don't see that we have made any progress when it comes to cancer statistics. Each and every year, we're moving more and more kind of closer to. Years ago, I remember about 100 years ago, actually in 1920, we had 1 in 90 women that would suffer from breast cancer. Today, it's closer to 1 in 7. And every 3rd woman is going to be dealing with one or another type of cancer, and every 2nd man is going to be dealing with cancer. So what is the problem? The problem is, as far as I can tell, is that we are focusing on what we see. In other words, definition of cancer is when we say that we see a tumor. And I like this particular analogy when you are looking at something like this, when you're looking at an iceberg, everybody knows that 90% of the iceberg is actually below the surface of the water. But as long as we focus on what we see, we're only going to see what's above the surface of the water. And that's the definition of cancer. In other words, once we see it, then we can start treating it. My suggestion is that we are ignoring the major part of the iceberg, that we're ignoring what's underneath the surface. And it is my goal tonight to kind of show you what can be done to address that. So prevention definitely is going to be more important than the cure, because by the time we get to the cure, it's going to be very, very tedious. Even the American Institute for Cancer Research will tell you officially that 1/3 of all cancers, or most common cancers, can be preventable. What does that mean? It means that according to their statistics, 38% of breast cancers can be preventable. 50% of colorectal cancer can be preventable. And I'm not going to go through each and every one, because I personally believe that these numbers are extremely low. I personally believe that anywhere between 75 to maybe even 90% of all breast cancer can be prevented. Let me show you why. So what are the known risk factors? I'm sorry, I keep skipping slides here. What is cancer? First of all, let's dispense one very important myth. The myth is that cancer is caused by our genes. That is not true. The truth is that only 2% of cancer is genetic in origin. 98% of cancer is actually caused by lifestyle and environment. And I can assure you that 100% of cancer is influenced by lifestyle. Even those women who have BRCA1 or BRCA2 gene, still that expression of that gene is influenced by their lifestyle. What I mean by this is, so what are the known risk factors? These are not necessarily in order of importance, but I'm just going to give you an idea what are the known risk factors. And of course, it's not a complete list. Hormone imbalance, endocrine disorders, diet and nutrition, lifestyle generally, radiation exposure, environmental carcinogens, iatrogenic diseases, diseases that are caused by other medications. Being overweight, smoking and alcohol, I don't think this is going to be a big surprise for anyone. Use of contraceptives, nulliparity, menstrual irregularity, early or late menopause, heredity, genetics, stress, trauma. Cannot say enough about things like stress and trauma. I mean, this deserves a whole new webinar on its own. Disruption of circadian rhythm, and finally, poor dental and oral health. As I said, this is not a complete list. So naturally, we're not going to discuss all of these things in detail, but what I'd like to do is just concentrate on the ones that you see in red: your hormone imbalance, diet, nutrition, and poor dental and oral health, because nobody wants to talk about this, or nobody even knows about this. Additional risks are lymphatic system disorders, low immune function, electromagnetic radiation, sleep disorders, very important things, poor GI function, environmental, dietary, metabolic toxins, and finally, improper supplementation. So let's talk about hormones. I'm going to simplify things, and we're going to talk about 3 estrogens: the estrogen, E1, which is a strong estrogen, 10% in your body naturally occurring is 10%. Estradiol, which is E2, a little stronger, also happens to be cancer prolific. And finally, the last one called estriol, E3, weak estrogen, cancer protective. Estriol is the hormone of pregnancy. This is the reason why you are going to see hardly any women in their pregnancy who are going to be getting cancer, specifically breast cancer. This is also the reason why more and more women are getting breast cancer, is because unlike your grandmothers and great-grandmothers, we don't have women who have multiple pregnancies anymore. We have maybe 1 or 2 or 3. We don't have 10 pregnancies or 8 pregnancies. And each and every pregnancy will definitely going to have estriol that's associated with that pregnancy. Plus, we're going to have women who are going to be breastfeeding. So if you have 10 children and you're going to be breastfeeding, that reduces the incidence of breast cancer as well. Now, there is diet, there is stress, there's environmental pollutants that affect estrogen levels. And remember that postmenopausal women, estrogen is going to be made by your adrenals as well as your fat cells. So as the ovaries are going to sleep, now your adrenals are going to take over the hormone production. And as we age, our adrenals age as well. So that becomes problematic. This is one of the most simplest, but very, very important slides that I want you to take a look at. Estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen and progesterone have a yin and yang relationship. In other words, they are almost opposite. But because they're opposite, their effects actually create that optimal balance. In other words, imbalance of one or the other will lead to health problems. Usually we don't have progesterone excess. We usually deal with estrogen excess. If you can see here, we have a 28-day cycle. We have the period where the period begins. We have the ovulation. We have the luteal phase around here. And look how these two interact. So first of all, estrogen will start rising and will peak in and around ovulation. And this is why the guy usually looks much, much better when a woman ovulates. That was a joke. Now, progesterone comes and meets this estrogen in the luteal phase. And why is progesterone rising here? Because if there is conception and pregnancy, then progesterone is going to shoot up to maintain that pregnancy. However, if there is no pregnancy, progesterone is just going to say, you know what, let's calm things down. We're not going to get too excited about this. Let's just basically slow things down and create that menstrual cycle, the next cycle, scrape that uterine wall and create the next cycle until next time. Now, what happens when a woman actually is on birth control pill? Progesterone line is flat. That's why you can't conceive. And generally what happens here is that as we age and women's ovaries are starting to slow down and go to sleep, estrogen levels continue to rise. I'll show you why they're rising, because of the environmental factors. So usually we see estrogen dominance rather than progesterone dominance. Okay, usually we see very low progesterone and relatively high estrogen. And as I said, estrogen is a hormone of growth. Progesterone is going to act as an opposite and say, hold on a second, we're not growing a baby here, let's just slow down. So what contributes to estrogen dominance, and what is the effect? The effect is quite simply, in some cases, it's going to lead to breast cancer, premenstrual syndrome, endometriosis, fibrocystic breast, polycystic ovarian syndrome, fibroids, ovarian cysts, cervical dysplasia, infertility, weight gain, hypothyroid, breast tenderness, depression, insomnia, increased blood clotting, uterine cancer, hypoglycemia, headaches, water retention, anxiety, irritability. Now, you don't have to have all of them. You can only have a few, but that's enough. What causes an estrogen dominance? One of the major contributing factors to this is the industrial livestock. We're feeding animals horrible things, and we're also injecting them with estrogen as well, so that they grow faster and they fatten up because we like marble on our steak. Therefore, industrial livestock is really, really detrimental to human consumption. Food containing pesticides and herbicides, xenoestrogens, industrial solvents, hormone replacement therapy. When I say hormone replacement, I mean synthetic, not bioidentical. Stress. Stress will cause basically shutdown of your progesterone input. Obesity, trans fats, oral contraceptives, as I mentioned before, vitamin B and magnesium deficiency, sugar, fast food, processed food, cosmetics, and toxic household products. Again, this is not a complete list. I'm just throwing out a few things here. How do you combat estrogen dominance? One of the most important things is you need to realize that you need to detox. You need to support your liver. You can use berries. Berries are one of the best substances that you can eat, or best foods. Citrus fruits are great. Cruciferous vegetables, I'm sure many of you have heard about this, are also great. Melatonin supplementation, very nice thing to help you sleep and help you kind of prevent premature aging. Iodine, indole 3-carbinol, which is actually made from cruciferous vegetables, either I3C or DIM, which are slightly different, but basically have very similar action. Calcium deglucarate, not calcium supplementation. Remember, calcium deglucarate is a completely different substance. Ground seed of flaxseed, and acetylcysteine, which supports your liver. Quercetin and nettles. With COVID pandemic, I'm sure you've heard about quercetin. We've been using quercetin way before COVID. It still works. Lots and lots of fiber. Fiber really helps your system to detoxify. Vitamin C and vitamin D3, hemp, maca, turmeric, and finally red clover. Aromatase inhibitors are also very, very important because things, let's say, like caffeine or alcohol, are going to convert your naturally occurring testosterone into cancer-prolific estradiol. What does that mean? That just 2 cups of coffee a day will convert 60% of your testosterone into estradiol. So go ahead, drink your coffee, and then complain about fibrocystic breast, okay? And I can tell you, I've seen thousands of women, and I always have the same conversation, and I promise them, give up coffee and alcohol. I can assure you, next time you look at your thermography images, you will see a tremendous improvement. So you can use other substances to help that not to help, but to kind of stop that conversion. You can use passion flower, chamomile, resveratrol, nettle root, saw palmetto, chrysin and piperine. Tribulus terrestris is a botanical, and finally, good old zinc also works well. Nutrition. Let's talk about nutrition, because even according to World Health Organization, which is not my favorite organization lately, even they say that 70% of all diseases are directly related to nutrition. So look at foods that will fight inflammation, because in the end, all of this is going to cause inflammatory response. Fruits and vegetables, broccoli, spinach, dark leafy greens, omega-3 hemp oil, non-refined grains, very important things, ginger, curry, basil, garlic, turmeric, berries, some fish. When I talk about fish, I only talk about cold water fish and, of course, wild fish. Fiber-rich foods, green tea, nuts. If you look at this particular list here, the #1 anti-inflammatory food is going to be garlic and leeks and scallions. Then we're getting into Brussels sprouts and, again, cruciferous vegetables. Beets are great as well, kale, asparagus, and so on and so forth. Now, remember, it's very important if you're fighting inflammation and inflammation is kind of the cause of so many diseases, if not all of them, the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is very, very important. In other words, omega-6 in pro-inflammatory, omega-3 is anti-inflammatory. We have created really Frankenstein foods. A basic egg has 6 times more omega-6 today versus 50 years ago. Why? Because of industrial farming. So prevent iodine deficiency. I can't say enough about iodine. Iodine, and specifically, I like Lugol's solution 5%. Iodine is antiviral, it's antibacterial, it's antiseptic. Your breast is a sponge for iodine, not just your thyroid. Iodine prevents and treats fibrocystic breast. And actually, you need 20 to 40 times more than daily recommended amount. Daily recommended amount is only good to prevent goiter. Asian women consume more iodine, okay, and have 7 times less breast cancer incidence. Thyroid medications and iodine deficiency will increase breast cancer risk. Remember this. Now, I also want to tell you that what's important when it comes to nutrition, and again, nutrition, of course, is a huge subject, and we can spend a whole night talking about this, but I'm not sure that Tally want me to spend the rest of my night with you. But acid versus alkaline foods, okay? Dr. Warburg, who got, in 1931, he got a Nobel Prize for this discovery. And he said that every single person who has cancer has a pH that is too acidic. In other words, in an alkaline environment, cancer cannot proliferate. So what are the main acid-promoting foods? Again, no surprise, it's going to be corn. Most of it is genetically kind of changed, modified. Meat, fish, fowl, eggs, wine, most grains, coffee, aged cheese goes well with wine, liver and organ meats, and most breads, of course. Now, alkaline promoting foods, you will notice that it's going to be what is called an anti-cancer diet. Mostly fruits and vegetables, even orange juice, chocolate, big surprise, potato, spinach, dandelion greens. Vitamin D deficiency is also very, very important. We have done a huge kind of problem, created a huge problems with this maniacal fear of sun. And every dermatologist has gone on this bandwagon of telling people to use sunscreen. Well, I tend to disagree. Obviously, you don't want to burn your skin, and you don't want to kind of fry for hours under the sun. Not that we have that choice in the wintertime in Canada, but you need sun exposure on your skin, a minimum of 20 minutes a day of sun exposure. And by the way, if you're going to be using sunscreen, remember that anything SPF over 8 is going to stop your vitamin D production. You need vitamin D. Again, vitamin D came up very, very high on the list of priorities for any kind of viral infection. We're not just talking about COVID here. We're talking about that approximately 600,000 of breast and colorectal cancers could be prevented by raising vitamin D levels. It's not generally checked through blood. You have to ask your physician to request vitamin D in your blood test. And I can tell you that, it says 75% deficient in vitamin D levels. It's very, very kind of conservative number. Remember that cholesterol is the base structure for vitamin D as well. In other words, people that have or take statin drugs will compromise their vitamin D production, okay? In the wintertime, naturally, if you live in northern climate, you're not going to get a lot of sun exposure. So please supplement and also use full spectrum lights. So the main anti-cancer nutrients, and again, this is not a complete list, but something to kind of to introduce, is turmeric, calcium diglucarate, milk thistle, as I mentioned, indole-3 carbinol that's made from cruciferous vegetables, or DIM, vitamin D, and iodine. If you can look into supplementing with all of them or some of them, I'm telling you, you're ahead of the majority of people out there. I want to introduce an anti-estrogenic diet. I've been talking about anti-estrogenic diet for the last 15 years, and it still makes sense to me, because basically what you want to do is increase your fiber coming into your system. And how do you do that? You basically have to eat foods lower on your food chain. Fruits and vegetables, legumes, roots, nuts, seeds. Now, if you want to, I am not suggesting this. I believe that most women that wish to prevent breast cancer, or actually any kind of cancer, can avoid animal-based foods, but some people may disagree with that. So at least if you're going to eat eggs and wild fish and fresh dairy, do that in moderation. Don't overdo it, and don't fall for this. Where do you get your protein? You're going to get your actually better sources of proteins from vegetables and legumes and nuts and seeds. No processed grains, sugar, overfed farm animals, as I've mentioned before, refined, processed, and chemically loaded foods. Anything that's basically packaged is off the menu for you. Minimize the intake of chemically loaded conventional food. Yes, once in a while you're going to go out, once in a while you're traveling, and if you have no other choice, of course you're going to eat it. But as much as possible, please get yourself into the habit of buying organic food and supporting local organic farmers as well. Yes, it will cost a little bit more, but I can assure you that you're going to save tons and tons of money on health bills. Elimination of estrogenic foods and chemicals is basically the thrust of this anti-estrogenic diet, and supplement with hormone supportive nutrients that I just mentioned. Promote liver detoxification. We can talk about detox, but some of the substances that I just mentioned previously will help detoxify your liver as well. I want to introduce to you, if you're not familiar, something called thermography. As I've mentioned before, I have been involved with thermography for 23 years now. What is the advantage of thermography and what is the disadvantage? So I don't want to kind of make an impression that thermography for some reason is the end all and be all. However, it has certain advantages, such as it's non-invasive, it doesn't have any contact, no radiation. It's risk assessment in true kind of term of the true sense of this term, and it can lead to early detections. Basically, women will have different shape of the breast, so all types, shapes, and conditions will work with thermography. And the important thing to realize that it is a physiological or functional testing. In other words, before there are any structural changes, you will have a physiological or a functional change. Now, the disadvantages of thermography, it is not an anatomical test. In the end, if your thermography is high risk, we're going to ask you to escalate and have maybe an ultrasound, maybe a mammogram, maybe an MRI, whatever it is. But at least you know, or we know, that somebody is at high risk. It's necessary to escalate at this point. The disadvantage is sometimes that it's also becomes as an early detection kind of signal. And what I mean by a disadvantage is that when we raise a red flag and then you go have a mammogram and it comes back negative, does it mean that thermography was wrong? Not necessarily. It's just that it may take 8 to 10 years for mammography to detect a large enough or a big enough tumor the size of a small pea. So if it's, let's say, in year 5, it will not be detectable, and therefore mammography or an ultrasound may come back negative. So as I said, it's both positive and negative that thermography may just raise the flag a little early. However, just because other structural tests come back negative, it doesn't mean that you can't become proactive. Some of the lesions are non-vascular, and therefore they're not going to be seen with thermography. Nothing is 100%. It's not easily accessible, unfortunately. Now, back here in Toronto or in many other places, we do have clinics. Mary, I can see you're on with us. Mary is in Kitchener, Waterloo area. Anyone who is from that area, please contact Mary. Quality, again, it's not standardized. So, buyer beware. Now, thermography, as I said, I came to it in 1999, but thermography actually originated. The first medical breast thermography paper and experiment was done in McGill Medical School in 1956 by Dr. Ray Lawson. He published the first paper, and he basically surmised that if we're going to see breast cancer with some kind of a heat sensing technology, then breast cancer will most likely show up as heat on our thermography. Now, you're looking at SARS epidemic, pre-COVID, SARS-1, not SARS-2. SARS-1 actually occurred in 2002, 2004. And you can see that when it came out of China and Hong Kong specifically, travelers were stopped before they would board the plane, and they would take their temperature with a little thermal device. Basically, they were doing fever screening 20 years ago. So it's nothing new that, in the last 2 years, it's become obviously more popular. So anyone with 37.5 degrees Celsius is deemed to have fever, and therefore, with thermal imaging, we can see hot faces and we can immediately assess who's got fever. Therefore, you're not going to get on the plane with something like this. The benefits of clinical thermography, first of all, as I said, it's non-invasive. There is no radiation. There is no contact. It detects inflammation, which is very, very important. And finally, as I said, physiological or functional changes are going to occur before structural things. In other words, before something grows, there's going to be a thermal, usually there's going to be some kind of a thermal change in that area. Speaking about thermal changes, angiogenesis, the term basically means angio, blood vessel, and genesis, the beginning of blood vessels, right? Angiogenesis really is a hallmark of cancer, okay? We all have little cancer colonies that are floating throughout our body, and they're not non-life-threatening. All of us have them, okay? The problem is when this particular little colony right there is going to connect to a major blood vessel. Why? Because, well, actually, we don't know the exact kind of line where it becomes non-problematic to all of a sudden decides to connect to blood vessels, but they are metabolically very active and they need more nutrients. So the body actually aids in proliferating blood vessels to this particular colony. And once it connects to a blood vessel, wow, now we have all the nutrients we need and now we can grow. So that's when it becomes problematic. And that is what we are going to be noticing, that immediate change. Once it starts growing, that change is going to produce more heat. So that's where thermography comes in, and sometimes, as I said, could come in even earlier than in many other cases. So I'd like to introduce kind of this image. Many of you who've had thermography definitely know what you're looking at. The ones that don't, let me just quickly introduce. The numbers here represent degrees of temperature. So darker colors are cooler, lighter colors are warmer. Okay, you can see immediately that there's something wrong with this particular breast. There's way too much activity in this area here. Okay, and that's basically what I just described to you. It could be that early stage of angiogenesis. It could be also naturally something later in the development of that disease process. But that's kind of something that I wanted to share with you. Treatment monitoring. Remember that with just 6 months of supplementation of indole 3-carbinol, this woman that has very kind of prolific, what we would call hormonal presentation in the upper portions of her breast. There's a lot of activity, as you can see here. Just 6 months of I3C brings her to this level. In other words, she is lowering her statistical probability of risk of developing breast cancer just by using indole 3-carbinol. You don't have to use it. I'm just showing it to you. You can eat lots of cruciferous vegetables. Not everyone wants to eat 16 heads of cabbage a day. So, you know, you can kind of cheat a little bit and supplement with I3C. As I mentioned to you before, I wanted to touch on something very important to me because I've done some research on this myself. Oral health is very, very important. And when was the last time your family doctor asked you about your dental health? How about never? So what is the exact connection? First of all, 75% of adults, well, it says American, but I would say North Americans, suffer from various forms of gum disease. And if you do have periodontal issues, let me tell you that that puts you into 11 times more likely to develop breast cancer. Okay, so this is a significant issue that hardly anyone knows. And because people don't know, they don't pay any attention. Remember, your family doctor is not going to be asking you about your dental health, and your dentist is limited to just a particular space in your anatomy, right? So there's a big disconnect, and I'm hoping that, you know, these two groups are going to start talking to each other, because it's not really a dental issue, it's a medical issue here. This is just for your personal interest. Meridian tooth chart. Meridian is kind of acupuncture meridians that is in Chinese medicine. You can see clearly how each and every tooth is connected to different meridians in Chinese acupuncture or meridian kind of system. And you can see that, for instance, you're looking at organs. Here, for instance, you're looking, let's say, second molar, right upper second molar is going to also connect to your pancreas, to the stomach, esophagus, parathyroid, thyroid, and guess what? Right breast as well, okay? So this is something that I find fascinating. I'm not an expert in Chinese medicine, but if you talk to a lot of holistic dentists, they can explain this to you better. Actually, if you talk to people that practice Chinese medicine, they're very familiar with this thing as well. So why I'm showing you this is that if there is any disturbance, let's say along the same line of the second upper molar, let's say you have a root canal, or you have a cavity, or you have inflammation, or you have some kind of an infection in this particular area, then guess what? It's going to affect the energy flow to the right breast. So a lot of people kind of say, well, I'm not sure I understand. Human beings are, and kind of our health is based on electrical grid. So if I turn the light switch on or off, it's going to turn the lights above me on or off. And it's the same thing here. You know, we may not see it, but it does exist. Here's I show you just, you know, let's say we have a cracked tooth and bacteria is going to get into this particular channel. It will infect the dental pulp, and that's how we get into all sorts of problems. Just because you fill it, it doesn't mean that bacteria didn't get into it. And here we have, for instance, gum disease. So sometimes we have periodontal pockets that leads to inflammation of the gum. Then we have gingivitis, we have all sorts of issues, but that also erodes and creates, as I said, periodontal issues are very, very common. So what I'm going to tell you is maybe blasphemy in some circles, but I'm going to stick my neck out and still say, never, ever, ever get root canal. Okay, root canals lead to chronic degenerative diseases such as heart disease, joint diseases, arthritis, and cancer. My good friend, Dr. Levy, who's published a book called Hidden Epidemic, describes this particular process. He also happens to be a cardiologist, so he's not a dentist, but as a cardiologist, he can see that a lot of bacterial infections happen to kind of penetrate the oral surface, especially when it comes to periodontal disease. So root canals will accumulate toxins, and it's going to be very difficult to expel them. If you want more information, I'm just going to recommend a couple of books. One is by Dr. Meaning called Root Canal Cover-Up, an old classic. The other one by my good friend and a mentor, Dr. Douglas Cook. I've learned a lot from him about dentistry. He wrote a book called Rescued by My Dentist. And finally, Dr. Robert Jones, who is a researcher, and he published a study, that a 5-year study with 300 breast cancer cases, where 93% of women with breast cancer had root canals, okay, and 7% had other oral pathology. So please do not get root canals. If you do, I would suggest that you find yourself a holistic biological dentist. Not everyone who calls themselves holistic or biological is, and have a consultation with them. You know, again, if you need more information, you can contact me or your local dentist and get additional information on what to do, how to get root canals out of your mouth, because it creates a cancer prolific environment. I'm not a great fan of tooth implants because they create other problems. Most of them are still done with titanium. No amount of metal is safe in your mouth or in your body. They're coming up with more and more zirconium implants. We will see 10 years from now what's the kind of, the jury is still out whether they're safe or not. But in principle, I don't think that this is good for your health. So just to kind of show you how we see inflammation with thermal imaging, we can see it in this particular case right there, the upper and specifically lower right. And in this particular case, it's the upper and lower left. I have published a study in 2012 in the European Journal of Thermology, where we've done a study with a local dentist here. It wasn't a big study. Nobody supported this. We had to kind of finance it ourselves. So we only had 20 subjects. However, out of 20 subjects, we had 90% confirmation rate. And there's a very, very strong correlation between infrared thermography and dental examination. And we had actually 2 dental examinations over a course of a year. So in 80%, there was a confirmation rate. What actually blew me away personally, because I'd never expected this, is that in 70% of the patients, they had no symptoms. Well, obviously, if somebody comes to us and says, my tooth hurts, can you image me? Yeah, okay, they have symptoms, but when do you go see a dentist? When you have nothing better to do? I doubt that. So 70% of patients had no symptoms. If you want to kind of additional information, you can go to our website, thermographyclinic.com/thermography/dental oral. And there's a whole write-up on something that I published 10 years ago. Dental pathology and breast cancer is very, very common. The reason, I remember I was presenting in Orlando about 15 years ago, and a doctor by the name of Dr. Simon Yu, who is a well-known, he's a world-renowned expert on intestinal parasites, actually. He comes up to me and says, "Alex, do you see a connection between breast cancer and dental pathology?" And I said, "No, I don't." He says, "How come?" I said, "How come? Very simple. Nobody ever told me to look there." So ever since then, I started looking at women who have been mastectomized already. And lo and behold, in many, many cases, I see a connection. Now, obviously, she doesn't have that breast anymore, but I will see a connection when we look at their facial images. Here is another one. It's a TMJ analysis in breast cancer. TMJ stands for temporomandibular joint disorder. In other words, your upper jaw and your lower jaw are connected right in here. So with ever so slight of pressure on one side or the other side, that is going to create temporomandibular joint disorder. Sometimes it will lead to headaches. Sometimes you will have some pain in the neck. Sometimes people will grind their teeth to try and alleviate that pressure. And it's not an easy thing to treat. In this particular case, as you can see, there's a big hot spot in and around TMJ area, and happens to be kind of a big, almost like a hole. Someone, blew a hole in this woman's breast. That's obviously very, very problematic. So what can you do? Okay, so I want to kind of empower you with some of the things that at the end of tonight's presentation, you can say, I can do something about preventing breast cancer. And it's not just breast cancer, by the way. You can prevent a lot of diseases out there, especially a lot of malignant diseases. Follow the same guide because it's going to work not just for breast cancer, but probably for 70 or 80% of cancers there. You can use specific phytonutrients, use curcumin, use citrus fruits, use vitamin E and C in supplementation or in natural form, of course. Lipoic acid is very good, and acetylcysteine is very, very effective. There are specific vitamin groups now, naturally, vitamin B complex, vitamin C, vitamin D, as I mentioned to you before, and beta carotene. Maintain a healthy intestine. All diseases come from the gut. That's an old kind of discovery from physicians going back as far as Hippocrates. So use probiotics, use fermented foods if you're into this stuff. And also look into mineral supplementation, okay? Things like magnesium, things like selenium. There are specialty supplements specific to, as I mentioned before, to estrogen metabolism, indole-3-carbinol, DIM, calcium D-glucarate, IP6, and finally glutathione. I've interviewed a world-renowned expert on glutathione, and Tali will announce we have a conference coming up in, I think, less than 2 months. So you'll learn more about glutathione. It's called Master Detoxifier. Specific anti-estrogenic diet, as I mentioned before, load up on cruciferous vegetables and omega-3s, flaxseed, fiber. Generally stick to low glycemic index. In other words, things like berries would be better, let's say, than having a banana. And finally, liver detoxifications. There are many, many different ways that you can accomplish this. I want to kind of quote one of my heroes. Maimonides was a genius from 12th century, and also happens to be a physician other than a philosopher and so many other things. He coined the phrase that the ability of a physician to prevent illness is greater proof of his skill than his ability to cure someone who's already ill. So that's something that I've been kind of inspired with for most of my kind of career in health field. I published a book called Breast Cancer is a Preventable Disease. I'm obviously encouraging you to source that on Amazon. As many of the things that I've just introduced to you are described in this book in detail. And as I said, of course, I can't cover the whole thing in just 1 hour or less. But if you're interested, by all means, get the book. I want to thank you all for coming and being with us. We have an incredible attendance. We have right now 90 people or something more than that. That's amazing. Nobody's making you do this. So naturally, you're interested in your own health. You're interested in prevention. And I would like to turn over to Tally now. And, you know, she has a few other things, and maybe we probably have a few questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We do have a few questions. Before I get to the questions, I just wanted to let some people know that if you wanted to get some more information beyond what you got from tonight, there are a few things. One is you can go to our website. Do you have the slide with our website? So if you go to Thermography,
there you go.
.com, that is our website, and there's tons of really great information, blogs, videos, lots that you can just get over there. So please feel free to enjoy that. As we just mentioned, there is the book, which is a very easy to read and full of amazing information about prevention. You can get the book on Amazon. It's called Breast Cancer is a Preventable Disease. And then the third is, as we just mentioned a moment ago, we have a conference coming up on May 1st, and that is a conference being hosted actually by the Canadian Association of Clinical Thermography. That is a not-for-profit association. Alex is the president of that association, and there are a few of us who also participate in running it. And the aim of that association is to raise awareness and education for people like yourselves about thermography and ways to improve your health. So we invite you to mark down this date, May 1st. It's a full day free conference that day from 9 to 5. And if you are not on our mailing list and you want to specifically be notified about this conference and how you can register, you can just put your email in the chat below to me personally, and I'll take your email and I'll add you on to the list. Okay, so now let me there were quite a few questions, and I apologize, I won't be able to get to all of the questions. Okay, so there was a question about, and a few questions are just coming in right now as well. Okay, so there's a question about some nutritional aspects and connected to fibrocystic breasts. So, so one person was saying that her naturopath says that she has very ropey, fibrous tissues in the breasts, and she wants to know ways to remedy this. And there are some other questions that are related to nutrition that may be connected to that question. So I'm going to just put it to you, Alex, about ways to remedy ropey or fibrous or cystic breasts.
Okay. Number one, look into iodine supplementation, such as Lugol's solution. 5%. Discuss it with your naturopathic physician. I'm sure they're aware of this. I would probably suggest maybe starting with 2 drops and 2 drops a day in a little bit of water, and maybe going as high as 5 drops a day, but slowly and gradually. And the way you can do that, you can start, let's say, week 1, 2 drops, week 2, 3 drops, and so on and so forth, until you get to 5 drops. If for some reason you feel that you're overdoing it, your thyroid is maybe cannot handle that, although most people will. Let's say you feel heart palpitations or things like that, ease off a little bit and go down and drop and stay with that. I find that iodine helps dissolve cysts and nodules or fibroadenoma in your breast. Okay, again, it's always better when you deal with a health professional that knows what they're doing. They can test you, they can give you additional advice. Another thing, what you can also do is use indole 3-carbinol, calcium D-glucarate. Again, discuss it with them. I think I would start with that. As far as what to eat, again, anti-estrogenic diet will work. As I mentioned before, you can also kind of use things, for instance, like, it depends if you have any, let's say, if it's related to your hormones, and most of things will be related, then check your hormones. See, you may need additional progesterone supplementation. But other than that, as I said, it's very difficult to kind of say, do this, this, and this without knowing your case well enough. I'm just kind of going to give you general direction. Okay.
That's great. And just, you were mentioning about hormones, and we have on with us tonight 2 doctors. I think they're still here. Dr. Moshe Deckel, who is in the United States, and Dr. Alvin Peddle, who's here in Canada. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who are looking for a doctor who can support you around your hormones, to check your hormones, and to provide you with guidance to deal with them in a natural, bioidentical way. So there's Moshe Deckel, D-E-K-E-L, Dr. Deckel, and that's in the United States, and Dr. Alvin Peddle, P-E-T-T-L-E, who's here in Toronto. That's just some more information for you.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that both of them have inspired me over the years. I've learned a lot, especially from Dr. Peddle here, because I've known him personally for many years. He has taught me many things, not just about medicine, but about life as well. And I can't say enough. He is a passionate physician with close to 50 years of experience. He has pioneered bioidentical hormones in Canada, and he's a true healer. So anyone who needs additional help with balancing their hormones, if you can't get a hold of them, please contact us, me or Tally, and we'll try and put you in touch with Dr. Peddle. Dr. Deckel and I also go over 20 years now. We both trained in thermography many years ago, and he's also a very passionate healer. So for our Americans who are joined us tonight, and you need someone who knows very well how to handle your hormones, you can get in touch with Dr. Deckel, and he'll be able to help you with prescription and overall kind of with assessment of what you need. Okay.
So we do have a number of other questions, and I don't. It's almost 9. It's 10 after 9 almost right now. So I know some people are starting to kind of wane off. so I'm just going to answer a couple of things. One is someone's asking if there is a place in Montreal for thermography. So it's a great question. If you go to thermographyclinic.com, and up on the top right, you'll see locations. Hover over that, you'll get a drop-down menu, and you'll see all of the locations that are in our network. We do have an office or an affiliate in Montreal, and there is another clinic that is actually developing in Montreal as well. So another clinic in Montreal is about to get started there. So you're in good hands. And someone asked about indole 3 carbonate, and you mentioned that just a moment ago. What's the amount that someone would take, if you can say, again, not knowing their specific case, and where do they get it?
You can get it in most health food stores, and some compounding pharmacies will probably have that as well. With indole 3 carbonyl, you can probably start very safely with 200 milligrams twice a day, and see if that works for you. You can probably go even higher. But I'd like to start kind of with the minimal dose first and see if that works. And again, it's something that helps your estrogen metabolism. So you may not necessarily see the results. I mean, obviously, it's not going to change your state of mind right away, but it's a very, very kind of effective way to regulate your estrogen metabolism. Many women will respond to I3C. Some women will respond better to DIM. So look and do your own research. You can go to Dr. Google and see what, and just educate yourself a little bit. But yeah, they're widely available, or at least they should be available in most health food stores. It's over-the-counter stuff.
Great. Someone asked if thermography is appropriate for men as well. Yes, it is. We do image women and men. You can, there's whole body. You've seen a lot about breasts and about dental, cranial, thyroid. We do the whole body as well. I think we're going to wrap up the question period now. And for those of you who didn't get your question answered, I'm apologizing. I said we'll get to as many as we can, but you can always contact us through our website at thermographyclinic.com, and we do respond. And again, if you would like to be added to the list and learn more about the May 1st conference, please send me your email. Thank you for those of you who already did. And just want to thank you all for being here and for caring about your health, and share this information and knowledge with other people as well. And we hope you have and take away actions that you will implement in your life to the best of your ability. And we just want to say once again, thank you, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you all, and thanks for staying with us.
Let's see if I can unmute everybody. I don't know how to do that.
It was
If
a
you want
great
to unmute and say
presentation.
hello,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, you feel free to unmute yourself if you want to just say goodbye. I'm having a hard time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
To see you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.